You're listening to Sweet Talk, all things maple. Welcome to Sweet Talk, all things maple. Joining me is my field-tested, extension-approved, and long-suffering campus-based co-host, Aaron Whiteman. Hello, Aaron.
Hi, Adam. It's great to be back for another episode of Sweet Talk, and I'm glad you finally got my title right after 40 episodes. So, what have you been up to lately at the Ailis Forest?
Well, it's a busy time of the year as we scramble to get ready for another quickly approaching maple season. I don't know about you, but recently we had a lot of wind damage up here in Lake Placid that knocked down several trees onto the tubing lines. I think we finally have everything cut off the lines and fixed, along with all those pesky vermin chews, at least ones we've identified so far.
Yeah, wildlife damage can be so frustrating. A few weeks ago, I put up a big section of tubing and then found half of it chewed up on the ground the very next day. And I try to remember the interconnectedness of the forest that produces the sap, right? The woods are an ecosystem, not a factory. But that's a small consolation when your tubing is laying in shreds on the ground.
Yeah, it certainly can be frustrating. And we seem for some reason to have a little more damage this year in at least certain areas of the sugar bush. And I know not all of them were squirrels. Not sure exactly what they are. Maybe they're fox or fisher or porcupine, but definitely some squirrel chew out there, but not all of them.
Yeah, there's definitely more than just squirrels out there. I've seen marks of all kinds of teeth, both big and small, in tubing.
Yeah, that's for sure. Sometimes when you see that big kind of canine tooth puncture, that's certainly not a squirrel. And if it was, that'd be a scary looking squirrel, right?
Right.
Now that we have the tubing system ready to go, we're starting to tap trees. So for today's episode, I thought it'd be good to go over some reminders for tapping our maple trees.
That's a great topic for this time of year. Proper tapping is important for so many reasons, including tree health and sap yields. And it's especially important for producers using vacuum because every additional inch of vacuum can increase sap yields up to 5%. So improper tapping can result in significant vacuum loss, which directly impacts the bottom line.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Aaron. Previous episodes, we talked about timing of tapping and other factors, but I don't think we spent a lot of time on the specific spouts themselves. To delve into this topic, I recently had a conversation with Joël Boutin, who has more maple experience and knowledge than you and I combined. Joël is from Quebec and works as a consultant to around 300 maple producers each year. He has been a great collaborator to the Cornell Maple Program and other maple educators. Joël is always a popular speaker at the maple conferences across the US and Canada. I always enjoy every conversation that I have with Joël.
I've learned so much from Joël over the years, and I've even heard him referred to as the smartest maple expert alive today. So I'm excited to hear what he has to say, and let's have a listen.
Hello, Joël. Welcome to Sweet Talk.
Hello. Thank you to invite me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the podcast. You have such a wealth of information and experience in the maple industry. So it's wonderful to have you on Sweet Talk to share that knowledge with our listeners. Every time I talk with you, I always learn something. So I know producers always enjoy learning from you as well. I want to center today's conversation around tapping tips. As we're heading into another maple season, I thought it'd be great to have you here for a discussion on tapping and production in the sugar bush. But before we get into that, let's learn a little bit about you. So, Joël, how long have you been in the maple industry?
40 years.
40 years, wow.
40 years.
Hard to believe.
Hard to believe for me too.
And what is your role working with maple producers? So I know you have a maple production operation of your own, right? But I want to talk about kind of what your role is within the maple industry. It's a little unique.
Yeah. When I finished school, agriculture school, I start my work as a teacher for a maple producer. I've been done in the maple until 1995. A group of producers asked me to be their advisor. And with that group of 50 farm, they asked me to help them to do maple. So we start in 1995, and I never stopped to work with them. So now the group has 300 farm. We have almost 5 million taps together. And I still have to help them because everything has changed so rapidly. So what we have say a few years ago, now we have to adjust. And in the same time, I continue to be a teacher I can teach to people who are producer, and I'm teaching in a school where the students are future worker to work in the sugar bush. And I have a farm with maple. I have 1,200 taps, and my sap is flowing directly to the sugar house of my neighbor, and he do my boiling with his sap together.
Yeah, so that's neat in that you're not actually boiling. I mean, you work with your neighbor and help him
Yeah,
on that, right? But that opens up that time for you to be able to go out and work with the 300 different farms that are a part of this cooperative group. So thinking about the structure of that group, is it like a cooperative as far as the syrup is all sold under one brand?
there is no sales in that group. It is only a technical group. 20 years ago, it was a sales group too. So at the beginning, we formed two group, a group for advice and another group. It was a co-op to sell the syrup. And we do that for a couple of years, but we stopped the part of our group who take care of sales. Now, with the organization in Quebec province, where everything is organized by the PPAQ, taking care of selling syrup is not so interesting that it was before. And now I just take care about technical part, and I don't work anymore about the sales part.
Okay. When you started in 1995, that group, that was all pre the PPAQ, the Federation,
Yeah,
which is interesting. So our members, are they paying to be a part of that technical group then, I'm assuming?
yeah. They pay a certain amount of money before between $300 and $400 a year. And with that, we organize mini Zoom evening about many subject. We organize some visit during the summer. We offer them to taste their syrup if they want. We can adjust their tools for the breaks before the season. And of course, they can call me all year long when they have to change some part in the wood and it needs the specific advice for that. So this is the type of service that we offer. And if they need to have a visit direct on the farm for to see something specific, this is something that we can do too, because all the other service was group service, but we can do some service individual.
Is there an extra fee for that individual service?
Yes, extra fee
Okay.
because we have to go and but there are some grant that exist for those individual service. So those grant can pay from 50 to 65% of the invoice of those individual services.
Yeah, that's neat. And it's a model of something we don't have in the US, but it's a neat model and service that you're providing there for those producers. And I think it's, you bring a very unique skill set in that you've been in a lot of sugaring operations, sugar bush and sugar houses, and seen a lot of different equipment setups, and you know it works oftentimes from what you see working with those producers directly and seeing the results from shifts that they make. Is that a fair assessment?
I am the result of everything that I saw in those years. So, yeah.
Yeah, that time and that experience has really added up. And that's why I wanted to have you here and excited to have you on the podcast, because you have such a wealth of knowledge from that experience. And so as we think about, centering around tapping season, when we're organizing different workshops and conferences, everyone loves to, come to sessions on tapping techniques and things about tapping and equipment too. While some of the other topics that are still really important or just as important, like food safety and business planning, they don't always fill a room. So why do you think there is such an emphasis and interest in tapping techniques or tapping tips?
Because depending of the quality of your tap, you will have the yield or not, and you will have the air tightness or not. So the quality of the tap will give you not only a good quantity of sap, but the air tightness that you need to have a good vacuum. Most of the time, when we train a new person that never tap, sometimes they are the best. because if we explain to those people that never tapped before, hey, this is what we want and why, and they will say, okay. So when you want to work with someone who do that for 20 years, I know how to tap. I know that you're good and you know how to tap, but this is some specific thing that I want you to do. And sometimes it's difficult to change someone. So to have training and session about how to tap, it's to talk to the new people who never tap and older people who tap before to say, there are some new knowledge that we have now, that we have new tools that we can use, and we can have session on, I do some session that on the Saturdays during December and January, 20% of the time we are in a class talking about tapping about for 7 hours. And I can go in the woods with people and tap with them to be sure that they have the theoretical part before is important. And with that, after when you explain the good movement to do with the tools, it's complete together. And the year after, a part of the team who do the tapping in the farm have changed. So you have to say it again to be sure that everyone is at a minimum level. And it is really hard. Tapping is the beginning of the season, and it will project you in a good way or maybe not.
Yeah. It all comes down to that production. And I think, as you're saying, a lot of these operations that you're working with, they're not just owners that are out there tapping the trees, but they're bringing in a lot of seasonal staff. And so those are the ones that you're really helping on training, correct?
And you have contractor that now offer service and say, hey, I can come on your farm with a team just for that operation, and after we go. So that is more often than it was in the past. So you can hire a team that will come to tap, and with them, it's extremely difficult to reach them, to teach them, because they are a team. They will never come on a seminar. They will never come any time that there's a way that they can learn. So sometimes it's the worst. So it's difficult to reach them and talk to them.
Yeah, because to them, it doesn't affect their bottom line as far as production. They're just getting paid for tapping the trees, right?
And you pay a lot of money for those people.
Just clarify, you're near Quebec City of Quebec, but how many of the farms in your area are utilizing those contractors to come in and tap their trees? What percentage, do 50% or half or three-quarters of the farms hire a contractor to come and tap their trees?
It's a minority. The majority of the farm will use the people working on the farm, but larger operation needs more than the past those contractor, and because it's for here and in the States it's the same. It's became more difficult to hire people who want to work in the wood in the winter, and because of that, what do you want? Will you choose someone in your neighborhood that don't really want to work in the wood, but you force him practically? Or do you want to use people from Mexico or Guatemala, and you have to take care of them, receive them, and be sure that they have everything? That's the second part. And or the third way will be, okay, I will hire those contractor, and they are extremely expensive, and they don't want to listen about your real needs. So they have their way to work, and if you say, hey, I would like to have more spaces between the hole and things like that, they will say, hey, we know what we do. So wow, sometimes you pay a lot of money and you're disappointed. So this is a good challenge.
Yeah, it definitely is. And as we think about that importance of good tapping techniques to optimize the yield, and the demand for maple syrup continues to grow. And, we're hopeful for a good production year, and prices might be coming up a little bit. People are hoping, so do you go out and add a few hundred more taps before the season gets started, or the other way of looking at that is let's make sure we do a really good job tapping our trees and keeping our vacuum high so we can get the best production this coming season, right? So there's different ways to looking at it. The more we can get per tree, that helps offset costs, that increases production. There's a lot of benefits to it.
Because we know more about sanitation, we now more understand that if the spout and the drop line is clean, you can tap more early and still have a good yield. That was not well known a couple of years ago. So if we have that talk maybe 15 years ago, I would say try to tap at the last minute. That is your best yield, without knowing why. And now we know that it's because of the quality of the sanitation. More you're clean, more you can tap earlier. And because of that, some people have reduced the number of people who do the tapping and keep the best on the team to have better tapping practice. So less people tapping earlier and have better yield than a large group of person tapping not really well at the last minute. This is something that we experience here, and that's our new way to planning the tapping season.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think some of the research that we've done backs that up a little bit. I'll follow that up with that a lot of my listeners in the US would respond and say, well, you can do that in Quebec because you can use isopropyl alcohol, but we're not technically allowed to use that here in the United States, right? And so when we think about that in the US right now, we're hoping we can get the isopropyl alcohol to be legalized for maple syrup tubing sanitation. But, are there recommendations you have for producers here in the US who can't use isopropyl alcohol now for sanitation?
But you have disposable spout and you have check valve spout. Those two possibility give you a way to have the possibility to tap more early. I will do that again.
Yeah, so there are methods. And I think the other one that I like to recommend and I like to follow is if you have replaced drop lines in a section, or, you have new tubing in a section with new drop lines, tap those first. Tap your older drop lines that maybe aren't as clean last. But if you can start sooner, start with the cleaner.
Yes.
So thinking about spouts, you mentioned, one method obviously is replacing spouts every year. And from research that my colleague Steve Childs has done and others, that, just replacing the spout usually gives you twice the amount of sap than using an old spout that has not been clean, right? And so looking at spouts, I open up the equipment catalogs and every company has at least 2 pages of different types of spouts. And some of them, I think I counted, one had at least 5 pages of different types of spouts. So what are things that you're looking for when it comes to selecting the spout?
The spout must be with no rough part. So the more it is smooth, the more it's easy to keep clean. The part that go inside the tap first. After that, it have to be with the plastic that don't move with the cold weather during the season. This is difficult because probably the type of plastic, probably the shape of the spout, and maybe other parameter will give you a spout that stay in the tree or get out of the tree during the season. If you have to just do that on a few tap in the woods, that's not a problem. But if someone say to you, hey, I have to retap with my hammer all my spout twice a season, no, you don't have the good type of plastic. And there are some spout, when they are in the tree, you're not able to take them out with your hands. So they don't move. So this is possible. So they have to not move. And also what we ask for a good spout, if The walls must be not too much thick because today was really cold day. And if you have a big operation, you have to tap when it's cold. But if your spout have a thick walls, you can break the tree and you're not airtight. So we can see now from some disposable spout tiny walls that can be tapped when it's cold. So a good spout, you can push it in the tree without make the tree cracking. And the spout must stay in the tree no matter the weather. But if someone choose a nylon spout, the wall will be for sure more thick. But what we want is soft plastic that can take the form of the apple without open it. So yeah, it's not easy to find a good spout with all the many, almost maybe 100 different spout that is available now. And we don't talk about the color.
Yeah, not even getting into the color, but yeah, there's so many spouts out there. So what you're saying is that taper on the barrel of the spout, so making sure that it seats into the tree, so that if you have those freezing thawing events, that it doesn't push out. And I've had that happen with spouts, and it's annoying. It definitely affects your vacuum, right? Even if it's just a tiny bit, you may not notice it as much, but it's enough to impact vacuum, especially if you have hundreds of thousands throughout your woods. But I think another one I want to drill on is that you mentioned the type of plastic. So you mentioned nylon, and then there's the polycarbonate. But I think there's a little bit more than just nylon versus polycarbonate, which is not advertised in the catalog, but even what's in the type of plastic, especially the polycarbonate, can change how well they stick in the tree, right?
Yeah. And sometimes you can find the one and you're really happy. And the year after they change it. They decide to change the shape.
Yeah, the shape of the barrel, the taper.
Yeah.
But they also might change the material, kind of the type of material that's going into the plastic a little bit,
Yeah.
right?
So they can change the shape. They can change the type of plastic. So it's not sure that the year after you will have the same spout that you bought the year before. So that's a little bit scary. So depending where we are, you have an operation, Adam, in mountains. So sometimes spouts, they will not have the same result in the valley or on the top of the hill because the frost don't come at the same speed on the night. And so there are more sap maybe in the tapple and everything will have an effect different. So it's not easy to find the good one. And imagine that now you have the good one, but if your drill doesn't make round tap hole, you can have a good spout, but it is moving and leak because of how you tap with your drill. And maybe because you take just one end and move like this, no spout can be good in that situation.
Yeah, so drilling a perfectly round hole as best you can without moving the drill around. So holding tight as best you can is important. Are you a fan of using, there's a few different products in the market now. I mean, originally there was the precision tapper, and now there's a couple others on the market. Do you recommend those to producers?
I have those since the first year. And personally, I don't use them a lot because I like to have the two ends on my drill, feeling the tapo and see the shaving in my drill bits to have a good idea of the quality of my tapo. But I can understand why those tools are existing. If I have 5 people who work for me, and those 5 people are really different from each other. I have a good one, two like this, and two have difficulty to be stable. If I bought them a tool that I will put on the head of my drill, I know that I will have a better average quality tap because the one that were good, they will be still good, but the one who have problem, I will raise their stability and the quality of their tap. So that's what I see here. Sometimes they're going to buy those tools for all the member of the team to increase the average of the quality of the team.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I myself am not a big fan of them either because I find that same where I want to see the shavings and it's heavier and bulky. But when you have a team who are maybe a little too quick or sloppy, I think they can really help overall.
Yes.
Yeah, so going back to spouts, is there a time where polycarbonate spouts are preferred to nylon? Do you have a preference one over the other?
Yes. If you don't have enough people and time to do the searching of the leaks during the season, in that occasion, I will probably choose a good polycarbonate that really don't move because I don't have the time to go to searching the leads a lot. So in that case, there are some polycarbonate extremely airtight. But at the other hand, when you pull out them, the bark can follow the spout when you take out them from the tree, and that's a big injury. So the quality of the best spout is a problem too, because it stays so well in the tree that you have difficulty to take them out. So we have now new tools that can pull the spout without pulling the bark. Okay, so we have to have new tools to do that. But what will do the real decision between polycarbonate and nylon? It's the sanitation. Because here, as you said, we can use a sanitizer for the spout that is the isopropyl alcohol. We can use a nylon for 15 years without losing yield because it is so well cleaned with the isopropyl alcohol. But when I talked to someone who said, I cannot or I don't want to use the isopropyl alcohol, okay, we go to the disposable 1 year spout with polycarbonate, and because you are not able to clean it enough. So that is the real question for us. Depending on the quality of the sanitation, we will go with nylon or disposable polycarbonate.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I think, just to clarify, when you look in the equipment catalogs, and sometimes, at least in the US, some spouts are labeled as seasonal spouts. And I think those are usually your polycarbonate that you only use them 1 year versus some of your spouts, like the nylon spouts that you're going to be sanitizing with isopropyl alcohol and using year after year.
And you have some polycarbonate that they are mentioned that they are good for 3 years. The difference with the 1 year is they put some UV protection. So for air, it will be again a question of sanitation. If I'm not able to have a good sanitation on my spout, I would take the one for 1 year. But if I'm able to clean them well with the isopropyl alcohol, I will choose the 3 year because they add some UV protection. Because the one who is good for 1 year don't have UV protection, and it's not rare that the second year, when we put them in the tree, they broke because they are weak.
Yep. Yeah, weak and they break easily. The plastic gets brittle.
Exact.
Do you think the perfect spout has been created?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Because the old spout were not straight. They were a little bit deeper. And because of that, when we used them by the past, they were not blocking a lot of really good vessel near the bark. The new spout, they are really more airtight. They are straight and they block the best vessel with more sugar and more quantity of sap coming more near the bark, we think. And the spout of the future will be just enough in the tree to stay there, but not block the good vessel. So it should enter less deep in the tapple. That's the one that we wait.
How much though? I mean, it's all based on theory per se. I mean, it makes sense that we're potentially, as we, part of that spout we're drilling in is blocking some walls of the cells, the vessel cells that we're getting our sap and sugar from. How much, though, if we're putting good vacuum, do you think that we're pulling from those cells, though? Do you think if we can keep vacuum high, we can potentially pull across those vessels from the outside to deeper into the tree, essentially, into our tap hole?
We probably do it now because our present actual spout are going deeper in the tree. There's probably the sap that is coming near the bark have to get back and return like this. I will call that a delay, but we still have that sap with a delay. I think it's more bad if you have a few hours of defrost on a day, but on a long 2 or 3 day flow, you will have that movement of going direction of the center of the tree and come back in the tap hole. That will be not so problematic. But for people who have only in high mountain or cold sugar bush, maybe 4 or 5 hours only of flow, that delay must be too long. The vacuum will produce you a better yield, but it will probably not avoid that delay.
Yeah, so you're thinking that if it hasn't been warm enough long enough, it's not thawing the tree internally more, it's just freezing on the outside. And if then there's cells that are cold blocking that sap to flow in, the spout is blocking it. So
Yes.
yeah, that's a good point. Thinking more about spouts, the traditional maple spout for plastic tubing has a 90-degree angle and then has, barbs going into the tubing. And now you have ones that have 45 degrees or 15 degrees or a curve, the arc. And onto them. Yep. Yeah. So any opinions, thoughts on, does any of that change production at all?
My answer will be maybe too much simple, but it's only a drop at a time. So do we need a big tubing inside the spout? Because it's only one drop maybe each second. And the best flow that I saw in my life was 2 drops a second. Okay. So it could be like this, could be like this. For 1 or 2 drops a second, it's enough. And the only thing that you don't want, if they miss the joint there are some spout that I saw that it was blocked here. So
in that elbow, right? That the plastic mold that blocked the elbow. Yeah.
In that case, I would say that it's not good.
Yeah. But as long as that 90-degree elbow is open, it should be okay. Because we're not, the theory in some of those different angles and things is that it reduces the restriction, but some of that's based on fluid dynamics when you have a continuous flow, and we're not a continuous flow.
There's not a lot of displacement because we don't have CFM in the tap hole. We have vacuum. So the air is already gone. So I don't need a big tube for that. And the flow is really low too. So I can understand those perfect spout, but I will prefer a spout with 90 degree that stay in the tree than a one who will be more theoretically good for the moving of the sap, but don't stay in the tree, or with too thick wall that may break my bark or my wood.
Yeah, those are all great points. We've had some conversations, and I've done some research on different spout diameters. So, the industry standard is now the 5/16 inch diameter, but I've found in some of my work, over 4 years, that the 1/4 inch spout, as long as you keep good vacuum, I'm seeing similar yields, and even on some of our other smaller spouts seem to yield quite well. What's your thought or experience with potentially going to an even smaller tap hole than 5/16?
The first study that I saw was 7/16 against 5/16. The first year, the 5/16 win, and that was not supposed, but it was because the 5/16 have a better plastic and more air tightness. And the second year, they hire someone who do that with the 7/16 all the season to keep them in the tree. And at that moment, the 716 win because bigger hole, bigger flow. That's what we understand at that moment. But we understand also that maybe a smaller spout, if it has a better plastic, will give you something really well. And it was at 20 inches of mercury of vacuum in that time. So when the 1/4 inch arrived, it was the same thinking. Do we lost the yield because it's more small? I think that we had many good 1/4 inch spout that were so good that they had flow more than the 516 because of the quality of the plastic. But if we compare with the same quality of the plastic, the same company, the 516 and the 1/4, normally with the same air tightness, the 516 should be better. But you show me result that it was not the case because probably higher vacuum will adjust that a little bit. So maybe if we still be at 15 or 20 inches, the 516 would be still greater. But maybe with high vacuum over 25 inches, that difference is less than it was before with lower vacuum. That's my understanding for now.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's, a great point. If your vacuum's not as high, your bigger tap hole is going to outperform any day. But I think in my opinion and what I'm seeing in my data, as long as you can keep the vacuum tight, that is key. And some of that comes down to drilling a good hole and having a spout that sticks in the tree and stays there and doesn't push out.
Yes.
A lot of folks here in the US have moved away from some of the spout adapters, the stubby spout. But when I still open up the equipment catalogs, I still see companies are still selling the spout adapters. Are folks in Quebec using them? Or what are your thoughts? Do they work? Do they not work?
Every time that I try an adapter on a stubby, it was really difficult to be airtight. And I think it was the joint with the stubby and the adapter that was the problem. Because when we use the same adapter on a good spout, we didn't have the same problem. So the stubby, I think, was more a problem. And if you come here in Quebec, you will see people who use a normal nylon spout and put the adapter on it. Sometimes they have the same size, so it's not used to reduce the size of the hole. It's used for sanitizing because some people don't like to cut the drop line each year to change the spout. They want to keep the spout, but they want to have something brand new and clean to put in the tap hole. So they buy a good adapter that is making a good joint on the nylon spout. You have the air tightness and you have the cleanliness, and that is interesting approach.
Yeah, it's something that I've been thinking more and more about the last couple of years, and that, especially here in the US, if we're not sanitizing with isopropyl alcohol, that instead of having to cut off and put a brand new spout, that takes a lot of time to have to put a new spout on each year. So if you can just have the adapter, so you have a nylon spout that stays on there instead of a stubby adapter, or the stubby part, and then you're putting that into the adapter, might be something to think about. And I'm hoping to try some of those this coming year at the Line Forest and see how they perform. And over a couple of years, I guess, when it comes to sanitation and thinking about, is that nylon spout that's inside that adapter, does that impact sanitation?
If you have a black nylon spout, a good quality of plastic, that will stay good for years and years and years, but you change each year with the best adapter polycarbonate available this year, you will have something interesting and you can change. If there's a new adapter that you will prefer that fit on your good nylon spout, you can change. That's a good way to work.
Yeah, that's great. Are there some common mistakes that you see that producers make when tapping trees?
Without example like tapping spruce. Well,
Hey, they're hoping maybe a spruce
okay.
tree will get some sap one of these days.
The mistake that we see is not taking enough time to measure the distance between the old tap hole and the one that you want to do. So people want to go fast, and they miss some old tap. And after they do the hole, they say, "Oh yeah, oh I didn't see this one. I'm too near." So going too much fast, it's difficult to do a lot of tap each day in the snow, in the cold. And if someone will present himself to me and want to work for me and say, I can do between 700 to 800 taps a day, I will not hire him. I know that he's going to run in the wood without take good decision because he don't take the time. So choosing the right place is one of the biggest mistake. After that, people who take only one end against two without the adapter. So if you have a normal drill and you don't take two ends, your end is moving and the hole is not round, and that's a leak. I know. I try a couple each year. I say, this one I will be okay with just one end, and it's a leak. So you need two ends. And is your truck still enough good to have your drill bit like this? When your truck is a little bit old, sometimes your drill bit
Wobble.
is like this. You have to change it.
Yeah. Do you recommend drilling at, on most drills, you can there's a 1 or 2 speed, right? Fast or slower. Do you recommend going fast or slower?
There's only one drill bit that can work on the high speed. Almost all the drill bit that we can buy, you should use the first speed because it's really hard for a drill bit to drill the hole, get out all the shaving in just one pass without push or pull. And at high speed, the majority of the tap hole is not really well cut, and you have some vessel closed bar uncut wood. And the best all are always with the first speed. But if you have a drill bit who is made for high speed and still doing a good quality of all, you can choose first speed or second speed. And that is the Bolduc in French. The drill bit Bolduc are able to tap in first or second speed. All the other bits should be used at first speed to have a good tap hold and a good yield.
Interesting. I don't think I've heard anybody explain it that way, so that's really interesting to hear.
Because the Mr. Bolduc, he was a machinist who produced pieces of metal, and people ask him, "Hey, can you shape my drill bit?" And for years, he do that for people, thousands and thousands of drill bits, and he always ask who is consumer before he pay for the sharpening of his drill bit. Hey, try it in that piece of maple, and he observe, and with the years say, okay, I know now what should be the best drill bit, and so we draw it. And it's not a drill bit made for metal that we just redo the head. It's a complete design to work in maple and for tapping, express for tapping. And everything in the drill bit of Bolduc have been taken to what do I want from my drill bit to do for a tap hole? And yes, people said, hey, it's for high speed. No, it's for any speed. So if you're not comfortable to use it at high speed, just stay on the first speed and you will have a fantastic tap hole. And if you want to use it at the second speed, it will work too. What would be a good speed? I think for the first speed, it should be 450 minimum. If you have 500 IPM, it will be better. But 450 would be the really minimum of speed for the first speed. And the second speed should be 1700 RPM and more. So the one that I use now, it's 650 and 2000. So with those two speed, I can do both on first speed or second speed. Really good tap hole.
And the The Bulldog tapping bits, I highly recommend. I know you turned me on to them, and they are hands down better than other tapping bits that I've used. They stay sharp for much longer. Other tapping bits, when they get dull, they don't do as well pulling the shavings out of the tree, and these generally stay sharp and continue to pull the shavings out. So they do cost a few more dollars to purchase,
Yes.
but to me, it's definitely worth it because it's probably going to last longer.
Yes.
Thoughts on tapping a spout into the tree? Generally we tell people not to overdrive a tap. We just want to, hit it until we hear the pitch change. But do you think, is it sometimes worth it to give it just a little bit extra tap to make sure it stays in that tree and doesn't push out at all? Or what's your thoughts on tapping into a tree?
If you have a good spout and a good size of drill bit and a good chuck on your drill and your two ends are adapter on the head of and you're really stable, you don't need to overdrive it, because if you do, maybe you will crack the tree or you will block more good vessel near the bark. So yeah, in the past, the plastic was so bad that we need to overdrive just to have less leak during the season or less movement. But when you have a good quality of spout, you just have to stop when it change of sound when you tap on it and you say, I'm done, and no extra. And it works.
Yeah, that's great. Switching gears a little bit and thinking about vacuum, and we've been talking about that the whole time, in that a lot of the things that we're doing in our tapping practices are really to optimize vacuum. So one question I had for you is, do you recommend tapping with vacuum on, or do you prefer to have the vacuum off and tapping?
Oh, if you're tapping when it's cold with vacuum, because you don't have alcohol in US, you probably have sap or water in your system and it's blocked. So you will not have vacuum everywhere, except if it's a brand new installation. But if you tap when it's defrost, that's bad, because imagine you have 7 taps on the lateral line, and now you have already 5 done, and it's flow. When you will arrive at the next drop line of that lateral line, and you take apart the spout and the T, air will coming in your system, and you will have an extremely backflow on all the other drop line of that lateral line. And that will be your first backflow of the year, and it's only the day when you tap. So if you don't have the choice to tap with vacuum, you have to have a clamp. You will block your drop line before you separate the T and the spout, put in the tree, and after you take out the clamp. It takes more time, but you cannot just do this and make a backflow on all the other on the lateral line. That would be terrible. For the reaction of the tree will be, I want to close that hole and I will reduce the yield.
Yeah, so putting that air in, it pushes that old sap or other things back towards the tap hole and
Yes,
starts to plug up the tap hole already
yes.
before the season's even started.
There's a day to do the tapping and there's a day to search the leaks.
Where do you see the most vacuum leaks typically?
The two most important coming from the spout that are not a good plastic and the spout is getting out of the tree, and the other is the saddle on the main line. There's the two biggest leaks on our system, the saddle and the spout.
I would agree. I think saddles can really be an issue. Any tips or recommendations you have for saddles?
It's sure that if you know someone who have the tools to fusionate the saddle on your main line and you know how to do it well, it's sure that it's good. But we don't have all those tools, or sometimes the people who just start their business, they don't really well control the tools to do that fusion. But when it's well done, it's a good one. The other will be, with what will you do the hole? If it's a normal drill and you push the drill bit on the main line, your main line will be not round anymore. It will like this when you push and come back after. Your hole will be oval. That's why you need something that will keep the main line round, and you turn a screw like this. So when you drill the hole, your main line stay round. That's really important to have the tool that you will do like this.
The mainline tools that slowly
Exact.
cranks down in instead of just using a drill that pushes on it.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite tool in the sugar bush when you're out working on tubing or tapping or anything?
My favorite is a rope with the two clamps to maintain the 516, but with a pulley that it's blocked. So I have 7 foot long of rope, so I can take the two part and pull, make them more near me, and they stay like this. This is my favorite for today.
Nice. Good. Well, that's a great recommendation. And my final question is, what is it about the maple sugaring industry that really excites you? It's not an easy industry to work in, especially you're up in heavy snow country and, it's a lot of work out in the woods. So what is it about the maple industry that excites you and has kept you in the industry for over 40 years?
Be in the wood. We are lucky to pass a lot of time in the wood, and sugar forests are nice wood. So we have the chance to work in a fantastic place outside, and the product that we produce is well loved by people. So it's a nice place to work. We have a nice product, and it's changed all the time because we know so few about maple that for you, Adam, all your life, you will still continue to learn and say, wow, I was thinking that I was okay with that part, but now we have new knowledge and we have to rethink about how to think it. That's really exciting.
Yeah, definitely is. Just even in my somewhat short time in the maple industry, so much is even changing all the time that I'm constantly rethinking different things. And I always enjoy having those conversations and thinking about how things change with folks like yourself. So thank you so much for being on Sweet Talk. I've really appreciated our conversation, Joel.
It was a pleasure.
Well, Aaron, that was a great conversation with Joel. Every time I talk with him, I'm reminded just how much experience he brings to the table.
Absolutely. What really stood out to me was his emphasis on tapping as the foundation for the entire season. He kept coming back to the idea that if you don't get tapping right, there's not much you can do to make up for it later.
Yeah, absolutely. Tapping sets the trajectory of the season is probably the best way to put it. Air tightness, vacuum, sanitation, it all starts with the tap hole and the spout. So important.
For sure, that is the foundation of the season. And another thing I'd like to call out from your conversation with Joël is how sanitation has changed how we think about tap timing. Tap holes used to have such a short lifespan before we discovered important techniques in tubing replacement and tubing sanitation. But now with those limitations lifted, we can really tap a lot earlier, which changes the calculus.
Yeah, definitely. This has been a major shift from practices of 20, 30 years ago, and even things 10 years ago. The industry continues to change. We continue to find new ways to improve on that production. But I think it still comes back to having that round tap hole, putting that spout and seating that properly into the tap hole. What was your thoughts, Aaron, on different types of spouts? I thought it was interesting to ask you all that question about has the perfect spout been designed? But, ultimately, does it really matter to have the most fancy spout out there ever?
Well, I've tested these spouts as you have, and it seems not to be the most important thing. And I appreciate that there are people out there innovating and trying new concepts. I think that's important. But what the evidence shows us so far is that the ability to stay in the tap hole and not get pushed out when it freezes, the ability to seal the tap hole and maintain vacuum, and the quality of the hole are just so much more important than any fluid dynamics or anything that are happening in the spouts. So at least for now, it seems like the spout design doesn't matter as much as the tapping technique.
Yeah, and I would agree. I mean, it's interesting to see new ones out there and see what they could potentially perform, but maybe that perfect spout isn't out there yet, but there's lots of options out there. And I think it's also important to remember that not one size fits every solution for every sugar bush in every region.
Yeah, it's great to have lots of options, including spouts, including tap hole size, and all these places where we're innovating. So I think at the end of the day, Joël really reminded us that maple production is still evolving. And after 40 years, even an expert like him is still learning. And that need for continuous problem solving and process improvement is part of what makes maple sugaring so engaging and fun. It's the challenge.
Well, I want to give a huge thanks again to Joël for sharing his time and experience. And thanks to our listeners for joining us. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to share it with your maple friends. And if you have questions, reach out to us.
And as always, thanks for tuning in to Sweet Talk, all things maple.
Thank you for joining us for Sweet Talk, all things maple with Aaron and Adam. Sweet Talk is produced by the Cornell Maple Program and is made possible with funding from the New York State Maple Producers Association and the USDA Agricultural Marketing Service. All music is obtained from Blue Dot Sessions. For more information on all things maple, visit cornellmaple.com. Have a sweet day.